Hello everybody, and welcome to a video that may seem irrelevant to most, but definitely holds an important place in online discourse. As you could guess, we're talking about a trend of memes that has been going on for a year or two now regarding movie and TV show characters, specifically ones that despite being evil, have become unexpectedly popular due to their backstory and circumstances and how they relate to men and the role of masculinity in society, from how it's viewed in society to how we view certain people and their circumstances in society. We will also tie these observations into a very particular character who has made a recent debut on both social media and meme culture, and how he specifically cracks the book open on how all these trends make sense. As a disclaimer, this isn't meant to justify or encourage evil behaviors, fictional or real, but rather to provide insight in the hopes of remedying their adjacent issues. All that and more will be discussed today, so stay tuned.
I don't make mistakes. I'm not just like the rest of you. I'm stronger, I'm smarter, I'm better. I am better!
It's not okay. It's necessary. What the hell are we gonna do without men?
I'm not some weak-kneed fucking crybaby that goes around fucking apologizing all the time.
Working on the sewers, they're up on the power lines. They work themselves to death.
I am done being persecuted for my strength. You people should be thanking Christ that I am who and what I am because you need me.
The gratitude for that is sorely lacking, especially among the people who should be most grateful.
Faculty had little time to react.
You need me
Those
to
who
save
escaped
you.
the initial onslaught of gunfire
You do.
ran for cover and reached out to loved ones.
So, to start with, who are these people and why does this trend exist? Well, in simple terms, these characters are all well-known characters tied to famous, well-performing movies. A perfect example of this would be Patrick Bateman, belonging to the film American Psycho, who has been used in memes a lot, even more so than these other characters. Characters such as the Joker from the 2019 Joker film, Johnny Bravo from the cartoon of the same name,
And this pen was used by President Wilson to sign the 19th Amendment.
What's that?
The amendment allowing women to vote.
Why'd they go and do that?
and last but not least, the main villain as well as one of the main characters of The Boys, Homelander, but we'll get back to him later. Now, all these memes have one thing in common, that being they seek to tie the backstory and personality of these characters to the everyday experiences of people, specifically young white men. In short, there seems to be a sense of relatability among this demographic of people to these specific characters, but why might that be? And is there any validity to these claims? Well, the answer is, while technically there is no one to blame but yourself for your actions, one cannot realistically blame young white men for feeling this way. For starters, a lot of real economic opportunities just straight up don't exist for men in general. Ever since the end of the Cold War and the rise of globalism among many Western and non-Western economies, a lot of major companies across the US took this opportunity to move a lot of industrial infrastructure to other foreign countries such as India and China, as well as Mexico, which allows for greater profit margins via fewer labor costs, as well as increased hours from these workers due to lower standards. Now, this is great for companies and consumers for obvious reasons, but at the same time, this can have a huge impact on America's economy, especially for men who may struggle to find a decent job after college, assuming they even go to college. And speaking of education, not only does it cost an arm and a leg, but in many cases it is required to get a decent paying job nowadays. And on top of that, many do not have the support network, friends or family, to financially support this. In fact, many have to work a job on top of that, typically part-time or full-time in the service sector of the economy. Think things like fast food or retail store jobs, in order to pay for that level of education. And there isn't necessarily a guarantee that they will even get their dream job or learn what they need in order to get it. And that's just the economic side. We haven't even covered the social side, where men often get the short end of the stick legally, whether it's with divorce or whether it's with being the only sex required by law to sign up for the selective service, aka the draft. Given this, it is safe to say that men in particular do not have it hunky-dory in today's society. That is also not something that would help improve or maintain someone's mental health in any context. But how does this apply to Homelander? So, in order for this to make sense, we have to talk about the main attraction here, Homelander himself. Ever since Homelander was born, he was treated as little more than a corporate tool. Homelander was born from a sperm sample given by Soldier Boy combined with an egg cell modified with compound V. He was born during a C-section, during which he levitated and killed many of the surgeons in the room before they could cut his umbilical cord. He also accidentally hugged his only mother figure to death while he was little, as well as being experimented on frequently. In fact, every time Vought needed to operate on him, they strapped him to into a hydrogen bomb in case he tried to escape. And he lived out his entire childhood like this until he was ready to go out in front of the public. Little was known about his life in between the events of the show and his childhood, except for the fact that he raped Billy Butcher's wife, Becca. Throughout the show, in the midst of his conduct, however, Homelander is shown to visibly struggle with various things correlating with mental health, whether it's with failed or failing relationships, trying to keep his team in check, or whether it's with trying to figure out what really happened with his childhood and early adulthood. And this is important because it adds perspective to a lot of his violent and impulsive decisions. It shows that he isn't acting out of a natural or logical impulse, but one that is a consequence of bottled up emotions and born out of trauma. So, how does this translate over to the state of young men in the West? Essentially, what it boils down to is that given the conditions faced by men in modern society, there exists a feeling of lack of purpose among young men especially. And just like with Homelander, men will lash out when they feel they've been isolated or put upon. And to say the least, it has resulted in some horrendous events in the past, such as mass shootings, bombings, stabbings, sexual assault, or general harassment of others. What makes it worse is that in many cases, wherever this problem is brought up, it is seldom addressed seriously, unless to mock men or to complain about the patriarchy, or to suggest that men are inferior because okay buddy, whatever you say. But ultimately what ends up happening is a vicious cycle where the problems get ignored or downplayed, then they wreak havoc on the psyche and they explode like a bomb in the form of an instantaneous release of emotional pressure, via some act typically. Then this true story behind the events gets buried by the institutions that are responsible for compiling and relaying information, and even if the story is told, it's usually ages after the actual event, or it is done in a way that tries to defer all blame to either the individual or some other factor that barely has an impact on the situation except in the literal sense. And the end result, assuming they don't fall into the same pit, many simply just give up on society, on humanity, on life even. And this can be seen by the political opinions of many or even the lifestyles of the same people, focusing less and less on important parts of life and more on just making jokes, building a career, or other simplistic basic aspects of life one can focus on. And one of the jokes or trends of jokes that tends to get focused on is the glorification of various villains as Sigma males, which in many ways just feeds into the aforementioned problems by leaning into being bad as some form of personality or even as a sign of serious masculinity. And while there is something to be said about being the bad guy in the name of the greater good, this meme trend crosses the line, and the only reason it continues is because it's either seen as satire or the people who relate to it don't care. They have no reason to care about being good, and because they have realized, or so they think, that there is no point in any form of noble effort, and the end result is just a cycle of confusion and suffering for seemingly little reward or respite. And it's why this topic, and more specifically this character, is so important, not because he's actually some kind of righteous figure, but because he's a prime example of how over time, even seemingly minor transgressions throughout life can build up when combined with an overall lack of purpose or means of achieving it. And in the end, the main takeaway is that when it comes to evils within a society, it is imperative that focus be put on what the society is doing to, for, and with its populace. And with that, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please be sure to drop a like or a comment, and be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn the notification bell on so you can be notified when new videos are uploaded. Hope you all have a good day, and I'll see you all in the next video.